reasons that I like the name Archmaester Rennie is because in real life I kind of am an Archmaester. I work at a university, and my position is Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, which means that I oversee all the academic programs on the campus. I started my faculty career as a professor of English and then went into administrative work in 2007 and have been doing that ever since.
So when you say oversee, what exactly does that mean?
So I handle all of the faculty. I'm the boss of all the faculty, except faculty never really think they have a boss. But in terms of personnel processes like hiring, promotion, annual reviews and stuff like that, those all are things that I do. And then if we're going to start a new degree program or we're going to discontinue a degree program, I'm the one who ultimately handles that process and gets to make the decision.
Oh, wow. You got some power. And I think it would be interesting to oversee a bunch of academics or any field of people who are just so accomplished and knowledgeable and, just experts in a certain area, and then see all their flaws in other areas,
Oh, Jason, you understand my job perfectly.
I used to work at a literary agency where we had a lot of self-help authors who were just so brilliant in one certain area, but they were just crazy in a lot of other ways. That's really cool.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you're here to talk about this episode with us. Oh, before we get into it, I wanted to mention, so last time we were talking about whether Shane or Lori said that line, it's true, and then we watched it and I thought I could see Shane's lips moving, but Lucy, you didn't. And so then in our chat, Randy put up a video of himself in his car saying the line while barely moving his lips, and I'm gonna play it for you. It doesn't have the same impact, of course, because you can't see the video, but I think it'll still be fun. Here it is.
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It was true the whole time. It's possible.
Yeah, it really doesn't have the same impact because he's not moving his mouth very much.
But we've started a movement. People are sending in videos now, mainly people in cars trying to say, it's true without moving their mouths. It's great. It cracks me up. I think Peter thinks I've lost the plot. He's like, what is that Pake? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And Megan and Penny and Pake all did one. Here, let me play Pake's.
So I'm not going anywhere. I'm home. I was just sitting in my apartment, but it seems like, I don't know, for some reason I need to be in my car, so I just
They all were in
outside
the
and sat in my car to do this because this seems like a prerequisite now, and why not? I'll do it. So let's see how I can do with the it's true thing, because this is a thing now. Thanks, Randy. All right. It's true.
You can almost see him not moving his mouth.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. It's the bottom lip. That's the hard one. It's true. It's true. It's
all right.
True.
So, and then that I just could not get this out of my head as sound actually wasn't coming out of their mouths.
Yep. Ironic. Yeah. This goes deeper than we first thought.
Anyway.
Maybe Lori's a ventriloquist.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And it was her voice coming out of Shane's mouth.
Or it could have been the other way around. Or maybe Carl was playing a joke.
Oh, I bet it was Carl.
Get back in the house, Carl.
I am in the house. So, all right, here we go. The Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 10, 18 Miles Out. In general, Rennie, guest of honor. What'd you think?
So I actually really like this triptych of episodes, the Randall episodes.
Which three?
The last one, this one, and the next one.
Okay.
And I like many things about this episode, and I really deeply despise things about this episode, and I will be talking about those in my points.
Mm. Yeah, I'll be curious to know whether you despise them on a storytelling level or a visceral, emotional level, or both.
Yeah, on a content level.
On a content level. Okay, that's interesting. Lucy, what about you?
Similar. I tell you something I really noticed about this episode. I'm just fresh out my second watch. The editing's really choppy in some bits. Like, it really cuts quite quickly between the two storylines, and I was trying to find some meaning to that I'll talk about a bit. It's about, I don't know, it's about ways of dealing with the new reality, I suppose. And I think I think it's quite an uneven episode. I think there are some moments of brilliance, and there are some moments that, like Rennie, that just drive me crazy. But I enjoyed watching it and rewatching it, particularly the performances between Andrew Lincoln and Johnny Bernthal.
Yeah, I agree. So good. Bernthal, and I thought Emily Kinney was really good too. Like thinking about it now, it's like there's thrills in these shows. It's a horror show that just keeps on going. So you're like, oh my God, like, oh shit. And then this episode and a few Walking Dead episodes, somebody says something and I feel equally intense. Like, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
you know, when you're
stupid.
like, when you're rooting for Andrea, that you're like, oh, something bad's happened here. But there were a couple of moments in this episode where I was like, oh, Andrea didn't deserve that. But yeah, it's confusing.
Andrea?
Confusing.
Really? I thought she deserved everything.
No,
so
we'll get
into
it. Not the Beth stuff, but some of the stuff Laurie said. Was pretty fucking harsh.
And same thing. I mean, on the other hand, with Laurie, like I was just like, oh, okay, kudos to Laurie for this. Kudos. Oh, you really went off the tracks there.
Yeah, you really screwed the pooch on that one,
It just
Laurie.
shows
didn't you?
that someone can say some good things and some bad things. It's not
exactly.
All,
that's the thing. It's layers, isn't it? So yeah.
Spoilers, that's the part I deeply despise about this episode.
Laurie and Andrea.
Well, let's talk about that because I think I'm not going to say too much because I know you want to talk about it, but the one thing I want to say, I wonder on a storytelling level, because I don't know if this is saying the writers think women should just be put in their place. I think maybe it's meant to get us talking about it like we're about to, but I don't know.
Well, if that's what it's meant to do, it worked.
What do you want to start there, Rennie?
Sure.
Okay.
That was going to be my third point, but I'll flip it and make it my first point.
We don't have to.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's do it. So my point is the preservation of traditional gender roles in the zombie apocalypse.
Bleh. Sorry, that's
Lucy decided to do her zombie sound.
If you've got a sound of vomiting, Jason, soundboard that there, because I hear you.
So there are many ways in which I like the early seasons of The Walking Dead much better than the later ones, mainly because everything mattered. Every death mattered. Every person mattered. It wasn't always just a mad rush of let's just wipe out hundreds of Zeds in a minute. And I liked that a lot. But the one thing that I did not like was the relentless policing and enacting of traditional gender roles. So, and it's not just Laurie and Andrea. The conversation that Rick and Shane have at the crossroads is a display of possessive patriarchy. My wife, my son, my baby, I have to protect them. And they're both doing that, right? But at the same time, interestingly, Shane says, I didn't keep Laurie and Carl alive. They kept me alive. And that's actually, caretaking was giving him a reason to live, which is traditionally assigned to being a feminine role. But then Laurie is such a misogynist, so much internalized misogyny and sexism. And she enforces the traditional gender roles in both season 1 and season 2. And it just made me really hate her as a character. When she tells Andrea that the men can take care of standing watch and Andrea should do laundry, when Andrea is one of the best sharpshooters. And by the way, that's not a shotgun, it's a rifle.
Right?
That is a prime example of how human capital is wasted through gender role policing. Why shouldn't somebody who's one of the best shots, no matter what their gender or their age is, be the person who stands on guard? Maybe Rick and Shane should do some laundry to cool themselves out. So I like it that Andrea tells Lori off, but her rationale isn't precisely striking a blow for feminism either, because she points out that Lori has a storybook life and a boyfriend too, and others can't have that, as if that was the only thing to aspire to. Luckily, in the later seasons, we do get rid of this gender role policing. We find some nurturing men like Aaron and Gabriel, and some seriously kick-ass women, primarily Michonne, but also Rosita, also Maggie. And then, best of all, we get Carol play acting the stereotypical gender role in order to be a stealth agent, right? An agent of stealth, a spy. And she's playing that role after she's already transformed into a formidable warrior. So eventually, instead of being entrapped in a gender role, she now gets to play with that gender role.
Mic drop.
Yeah. No, I mean,
solved it.
Here, like, I was just feeling like Lori's being so good here. She's trying to comfort Beth, and she's telling Andrea, no, you don't leave her alone to kill herself. And then they start veering off into, like you say, gender roles, and that she's criticizing Andrea for keeping watch, which you need someone to be up there with a gun keeping watch, and saying, the burden is greater on us to cook the food and do the laundry and all that stuff like that. And it's ridiculous. And I would guess that the writers know that people aren't going to be like, yeah, Lori's right. I think they know that most people watching are going to be like, no, Lori, I think, right? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, there's a huge Tradwife Walking Dead contingent, didn't you know? No, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think so. Right. And I think that's one of the things I've always liked about the idea of The Walking Dead, is the idea that, and I think Kirkman did a great job of this actually in the comics, that it's a good time to sort of question, do we really need to keep doing things the way that we've always done? I mean, it's always a good time to question that, but especially after this, when the whole world order is just shaken up and destroyed. And the show does do that, as you mentioned, like the women just become more and more badass and respected, and gender becomes less of an issue. But we're still early on, and so I actually think it's a good story point to put it in there, even though I think it's, I don't know. I was going to say it's hard to believe that anyone would talk and act like Lori, but I don't think it's that hard to believe, actually.
Oh, I don't think it's hard to believe.
No,
I just think it's horrifying.
It is, yeah.
I think Lori has a lot of resentment sometimes for the life that she's in, because she talks in those flashbacks about her and Rick getting together so young, and Carl saying things like, you're just a housewife, and things like that. So I think she's in this weird position where the role that she's in is the role that she is in, but perhaps she resents it and perhaps she feels trapped in it. But sometimes the way that is expressed is by judging those who do not have that. Like, the thing that struck me the most about this scene was how bitchy Lori is to Andrea. Like, it's quite unprovoked at a certain point where she says, you'll understand if I don't send you through there. I was like, whoa there. Okay, Andrea's being a bit self-obsessed here by talking about her situation. But she goes from that to, and you're such a productive member of the group. Like, it really goes quite feral quite quickly.
Yeah. I think resentment has been building up,
Yeah. And I think that line about sitting up in the RV working on your tam with a shotgun in your lap is just pretty unforgivable. And I push back against this idea about domestic stability and we are providing stability. I'm like, oh, God. Get the farm overrun and get them eating dog food ASAP, because this is terrible. I just hate it.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, I think there is something to be said for having good food around, having a clean place, but it doesn't have to be all the women doing that and the men doing this other thing, right? Whoever feels drawn to do whatever, you know, I mean, if there is an imbalance and they need to address it within the group, like no one's doing the laundry, but maybe Glenn would like to do the laundry rather than being sent down wells, you know?
Yeah. Oh, let's start a movement. Let Glenn do the laundry.
Yeah.
Do the
It's
laundry,
safer.
please. It's safer for him. We love him. It's I agree with you, Rennie, that it does. I find it so hard because this is the closest I come to feeling like I'm on Andrea's side, is this point where Laurie is being really unfair to her. Like what she's saying is stupid, because what she's saying is if you were a man it would be okay to do that. Our place is here, and it's hinted at earlier when she's talking to Maggie about like our job is to stay here, what goes on out there goes on out there kind of thing.
Yep.
Which I just think is so ridiculous.
Other episodes she's said things to that hint at this way.
Yes.
She has.
Yes, she has.
But then Andrea comes in and it becomes a little bit about jealousy and a little bit about, oh, the reason I do this is because I don't have the traditional heteronormative markers that you do that are successes.
Yeah. And which is bullshit, because she was just telling, like, she's saying, oh, yeah, easy for you to say, Laurie, that Beth should just be fine because you have everything. You have your son and your husband and all that. But just a few minutes earlier,
boyfriend,
Andrea had been saying just a few minutes earlier, oh, Beth needs to find reasons to live herself. That contradicts that. It's like, oh, well, then you're suggesting there could be some reasons besides just all this bullshit. But I think also at this point, they're kind of just yelling at each other. And it's like those arguments where you say things and later maybe go, oh, God, I guess I shouldn't have said that. You know, I didn't mean that. But I think it's good for the series. It's not necessary, but it's okay for the series to explore this kind of thing early on. And I'm glad that it wasn't an issue throughout the series. I'm glad it kind of went away. At least I think it did from my memory. At least it wasn't as pronounced as this.
It did. It really did.
Yeah, I think it did. I think a lot of The Walking Dead moved with the decade in which it was really developing and got more intersectional and got more up to date on how things were.
But I think it's good for it, like race. You know, we talked about race early on too, and for these things to have been an issue early on, and then for them to realize we don't need to worry about this stuff anymore. Let's just have people be people. Anyway, okay, Lucy, you want to
go? Okay, so there was some pretty heavy-handed symbolism in this episode that I think I liked, but I think it showed the show at a younger age than it became. I think there's bits of this that were more heavy-handed than they might have been in later seasons, but it was interesting to see. On a very basic level, I was really noticing that. So with most of the walker kills, what they have is like a plastic knife or prop or whatever, and then they add the blood and viscera and the wound through CGI, apart from when they really kill walkers, which, you know, they just show the full thing. But I noticed it much more. I don't know if it was the quality of the one I was watching. I noticed a bit more of the CGI than I'm used to, I think just because it's earlier seasons. But in terms of the kind of literary symbolism in it, let me go through some of the examples. So one of the first ones is Shane looking out the window at the lone walker kind of ambling through the field. And I think that walker turned up in the credits for quite a long time. I feel like we see that walker repeatedly. So obviously there's something there about Shane as a lone wolf going out on his own, not being part of a group, striding away. Yeah.
I think that's because Rick just told Shane, look, you have to accept that I am capable of taking care of Laurie and Carl, and that Laurie is not your wife or girlfriend. She's my wife. You need to let go of that. And so then for Shane, then Rick's just kind of going through some logistics about things that they're going to do over the winter and all that. And Shane's just like, wow, my whole purpose was just taken away, and my connection to this group, and where do I even fit in anymore? And maybe I'll just be like that walker all by myself, like The Walking Dead, out there alone, not too far from now. That's the vibe I got from it, you know.
100%. Yeah.
Isn't that lone walker Greg Nicotero?
I think it might be.
Oh, it might be. It wasn't on IMDb, but I have heard this before. And by the way, we'll go back to the IMDb deep dives this episode.
Oh, cool.
So after that, they drive over this intersection. It's like a level crossing. Do you call them level crossings in America?
Overpass.
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 Okay, yeah. So they pass over that, and I'm kind of like junction in the road. They get out and scope this Department of Public Works, and then we get the symbolic cop walker. Two of them, two cops. If only we knew two other cops who are also here going through some shit. So they take down these two walkers, and then they move the bodies so they're lying side by side, which is handy for later symbolism. So we've obviously got ciphers here for Rick and Shane and the people they used to be and the identities they used to have in their history together. The next symbolism, kind of visual symbolism, I thought was Shane literally throwing a wrench in everything and smashing the window.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about it till this episode. I was literally writing my notes and I'm like, Shane throws a wrench
in the works.
And then we get that iconic image of Shane seeing his reflection in the glass, and he looks like a walker. He's like bleeding from the mouth, he's pale, and he sees himself in this kind of monstrous state, and you can tell that really kind of impacts him and how he views himself. Then we have it's standard sort of Z action for a little bit, but one of the things that changes Rick's mind and makes him go back for Shane is that he sees the Z cops on the ground and is reminded of the history we have together. One point where I thought the janky editing might have been making a point is that this comes just after we see Beth holding her wrist saying, "I'm sorry," and then we see Rick having second thoughts, and I'm like, oh, there's something here about regret. But then I went back and tried to piece that together in the other juxtapositions, and I couldn't quite get anywhere. He sees the Z cops, he goes back and rescues Shane, and then finally we see the solo Z again walking through the field. And as Shane is watching him, we actually see a bit of the field framed in the corner of the window of the car. So it looks as though Shane is kind of also immersed in a field. And obviously he's thinking again about his place within the group and the way in which he is alone and separated. So I thought they were heavy-handed on the Walker symbolism, but I did enjoy it in this episode.
No, I mean, I don't feel like that one, especially in particular, is heavy-handed, because it is symbolism, but it also is just a real
image.
Feeling in the moment that I could see him having. You know, it works for that moment, not just on a symbol level, but an emotional level.
I think the heavy-handed one was like the cops lying side by side, practically holding hands, and Rick looking at them like, what could this possibly remind me of? And I was like,
yeah, I like it all. I like all that.
I liked it.
That's good. Cool. Okay, my turn. Rick and Shane. I'm just going to kind of go through their dynamic and through the lens of the events of this episode. So Rick pulls over. He wants to talk to Shane about what happened with Otis. And this is right after the whole Macbeth scene, last Lady Macbeth scene. And it did make me wonder why it seemed a little like, oh, you're taking him out. It's almost like you're deciding whether you want to put Shane out to pasture if he gives the wrong answer here. But Rick says, was it to survive? Which I liked, because he sort of intuits that Shane wouldn't do that unless he felt he had to. And Shane said, yeah, one of us wasn't going to make it out. It had to be him. One shot to the leg. Carl lives. And I think that's absolutely true. If he hadn't done that, Carl would probably be dead. And Shane didn't even mention that he had at first told Otis to go on without him, and Otis wouldn't. And so the choice was either both of them and Carl die, or just Otis. I think that's what the writers had in mind anyway. Otis was going to die no matter what.
Yeah, I remember it being, when we rewatched it, much more of a catch-22 than I thought. I was like, oh, okay, there's a bit more context to this than I've remembered. Right.
And it's like what we said earlier in this podcast, just because Shane did that one thing arguably right doesn't mean everything he did was right. But then Shane kind of ruins it by saying, really, he had no business being here, there, whatever. So he's sort of saying, yeah, I had to do it, but Otis was not built for this world. That phrase that is sort of a theme of this season. And that also implies that maybe he thinks Rick doesn't have any business being here either, or at least that he needs to prove it. And Shane and Rick gets that. You don't think I would have done it? No, man. I know you wouldn't have. You think I can't keep Lori or Carl safe? So it's funny how the conversation turned from, did you kill Otis, to I totally would have done that too.
I'd have done it better. I'd have done it more. My penis would have been even bigger. I can do it. I'm a man. Exactly. And you're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah. And I was, because we covered The Lord of the Flies on Yellow Jackets. It's not out yet, but it'll be out soon. And there was this Freudian interpretation of some of the characters in that. So I was thinking of that as far as Shane and Rick go, and I don't, ascribe a lot to Freud. A lot of his thoughts have just sort of been thrown by the wayside over the years. But the whole id, ego, superego thing is kind of interesting, maybe. So Shane is like id, Rick is ego, and maybe Dale is superego. Just to remind people, id is the primitive part of the personality, basic drives and instincts. It seeks immediate gratification for desires and wants and needs. And if those aren't met, then it generates anxiety and can fuel aggressive, destructive energy directed inwards towards yourself or outwards towards others. The ego develops from the id and ensures that the impulses of the id can be expressed in a manner acceptable in the real world. It operates on the reality principle, mediating between the unrealistic id and the external real world. So it's part of the conscious and unconscious mind. And then superego incorporates the values and morals of society, which are learned from your parents and others. Its function is to control the id's impulses, especially those which society forbids, like sex and aggression. And so Shane says, Rick, you can't just be the good guy and expect to live. Okay, not anymore. And Rick says, I'm not the good guy anymore. To save Carl's life, I would have done anything. And now Lori says, you're dangerous, but you're not going to be dangerous. Not to us, not to me anymore. You and Lori, I get what happens. And then he says, when I figured it out, I wanted to break your jaw, let you choke on your teeth, but I didn't. That wasn't weakness. It took everything. So that's like the ego. You have to mediate your impulses, your id. And then we know, then he says, that is my wife, that is my son, that is my unborn child. I will stay alive to keep them alive.
Oh, you said that wrong, Jason. It's my son. My son. My wife.
I don't have the same filter for that as you do. I don't think it sounds possessive, but given that Shane seems to want to kill Rick because of his love for Lori, I think it's reasonable for Rick to be like, she doesn't want you and it's my wife. I mean, you're right. I didn't say it the way Rick did, my wife, but
if you go back and listen to the way that Andrew Lincoln delivers the line, the emphasis is all on the my
on his. Yeah, but he's saying mine, not yours. Like, step off, buddy.
But she's not his anything. She's her own person.
Anything.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Exactly.
She's not his property.
Not his property. And I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying, like, unless they're going to have a throuple, that either Rick and Lori are a couple or Rick and Shane are a couple. And I think he's just
Rick and Shane.
No, not Rick and Shane. Well, it could be Rick and Shane.
No, I think you said
Lori
it right.
I think you said it right. I think their chemistry is off the charts.
Lori and Shane.
It is.
Rick and, no. So he's saying it can't be a throuple, right? And so
why not?
Well,
there are no rules.
It could be, but it's not going to be. Rick and Shane aren't gay, and they're not gonna go there. That's pretty clear. I mean, that would be a different story. That'd be fine. There is a story like that in the comics, but that's not the story that they're telling here. And so, if it's going to have to be either Rick and Lori, I make sure I get this right, or Shane and Lori, then that's kind of like, and Lori and Rick have both decided they want to be together. So he has to make that clear to Shane. Like, you're not her boyfriend anymore. I'm back. I think that's totally reasonable. It's not saying you don't take what's mine. It's more like, hey, we can't have a successful group here if you keep trying to sleep with my wife and kill me.
I think the problem underlying it is that the way these relationships are set up in life and the way that we've always understood hetero relationships is that there's an element of possession of male over female. And I don't think for a minute Rick literally thinks he owns Laurie and is playing that here. But it's the social conditioning of, it's my wife, it's my kid, it's this thing, it is mine, when actually they're all their own people within that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of the bit that sticks in the craw. And I think it's enhanced by then having Laurie be like, well, my job is to be in the kitchen and not
I know, like she's playing into the whole possessiveness thing. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that Rick is arguing like, you don't take what's mine. I think it's more like, hey, we're a couple here and you don't fit into that equation,
Well, I think that you are a much more reasonable man, Jason, than either Rick or Shane. And that influences your reading of the scene.
It could be. You could be right. I don't know. I think Rick is a more reasonable man than Shane, but maybe not.
Well, maybe right now.
Yeah.
But in future seasons?
But not in that way, though, where he's claiming possession over people. I see him being unreasonable in other ways.
Underlying thing that I see, which is nobody ever even considers the possibility that Laurie might be able to take care of herself. I mean, obviously Carl's a child and needs to be taken care of. But there's, this idea that the men have to protect the women, but Andrea doesn't really look like she needs a lot of protecting.
But look at how Rick is with Michonne later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I like later seasons better.
Rick is the kind of guy who gives, it doesn't say, oh, you're a woman, so you need to be like this. No, he sees that Michonne can take care of herself and he fully respects her that way. And I think he, probably if Laurie was like that right now, he would be the same. I don't think he's saying, hey, don't mess with my property, buddy. I just think he's saying, hey, we're a couple here and you don't fit into that equation. But I could be wrong. I don't know. That's not really the main point of what I'm saying here. It's a little bit a part of it. But I think whatever your read on the situation is, Shane is not welcome in this as a romantic partner, for Laurie. And that's the point that Rick wants to get across. And he says, you don't love Laurie, and that the only reason you can keep on is if you accept everything I just said. So he's just saying, if you don't let go of Laurie and this idea that you can keep them safe and I can't, then you're going to have to leave the group, I think is what he's saying. And Shane barely nods. It's almost the same as when he was saying, what was he saying? It's true. It's like a vague nod, just a little bit of a nod. But then he doesn't accept it, and I think Randall is such a crucial part of what goes wrong that's why Randall's there, to provide this decision point for Rick that Shane absolutely doesn't approve of, so that Shane will have reason to totally go against Rick. Because first it was the zombies in the barn and they're taken care of. So now it's Randall. And, what else? Yeah, we already talked about the lone zombie. And then when they try to drop him off and they fight, because he tried to shoot Randall and Rick stopped him. That was so intense. And he just said straight out, I don't think you can keep him safe. The way that Bernthal delivered that line right before he started to attack him was so good. And then that was such great TV and so tragic. And then throwing the wrench at him was fucked up, man. That could have killed him. And it's a good thing he wasn't a good, and then of course that woke up all the Zeds. And that's my point about Shane, is maybe he has some points worth talking about there, but he has no self-control over his emotions. And that ends up putting people in more danger than anything, Yeah,
that whole situation was Shane's fault.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And
sorry,
like,
my cat is just like at the camera.
That's why I think that Shane, I don't think he would. We always wonder how he would do against later villains. I don't think he would do that well against the governor or Negan or Alpha, because he's not in control of himself. Yeah. And that you just can't be effective like that. You're going to get yourself in trouble.
He's an absolute hothead.
I'm trying to see if I have any.
I actually think Oh, go ahead, Lucy.
I was going to say what Reddy said about it hasn't occurred to them that Laurie can look after herself. I don't think it's occurred to Laurie either.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's because of patriarchy, because she's been taught that women have to have a man to protect them. But what I was going to say is I actually think it's both their faults that they both screwed up in a way that people aren't going to screw up later in the apocalypse, because they didn't check to see if there were any Zeds in that building.
They didn't? What an oversight.
Before they were planning on leaving Randall there by himself.
They're trying to find a good place, and it's like, not this place. At this point, if Rick were to take Shane's advice about killing anyone who's a threat, he should maybe kill Shane. Like, Shane's...
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Oh, that would have been a good scene. Like, you have to kill anyone who's a threat, and Rick's like, sure. And then,
bam!
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
And then he gives him, even he's saying at the beginning, look, if we're going to continue on, you have to accept this. Then Shane tries to kill him. And then at the end, he's like, you're really going to have to accept this. Like, he just gives him another chance. and one more thing I wanted to say about all that is I can get into Shane's head here a little bit, and he's just like, I love that line about they were what kept me alive, because that really gives me the feeling of why he's so obsessed with them, just thinking like, oh my God, zombies are eating everyone, I'm gonna die, and then thinking, oh wait, my purpose is now to protect these people and whatever. So, and then when Rick comes back, he's just thinking Rick can't protect them the way that I can. He just can't. He's going to get them killed. And spinning on something that you think you're right about, or I should say myself, I've been in that situation. No one's going to be surprised by that, where I feel like I'm right on something and I just keep thinking over and over about it. So I can totally get into his head about that. But sometimes you just got to let go, even if you are right.
His relationship to Rick in this episode was fascinating to me, because we spoke about this a bit on the last episode about the little boy inside of Shane, and you see that when Rick's talking to him in the first scene where he says, I figured it out pretty quickly. I'm really glad Rick said that, because it confirms that he's not dumb about Shane and Laurie. But Shane looks so shamed in that episode, and I think for me it was very interesting when he sees Rick drive off, the look of abandonment on his face, and that for all he criticizes Rick for being this good guy, he relies on it too. And there's a fleeting look of joy on his face when Rick comes back, and I don't know, and he gives him this look when they're back in the car together that's almost appraising, like, oh, you did something I wasn't expecting, or like, you've got more grit to you than I expected. I loved that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. He's the type of guy that if you punch him in the face, he might respect you more, which is so macho.
Oh, I know.
But I would also just like to note how great Bernthal's acting is in all of the things that you were just describing.
Yes. That's
possible because Bernthal's able to convey that with very little muscular movement in his face.
Yeah, he's got the vibe.
He's so great. All the plaudits for Bernthal. I think he's so good. He looks like a monster for most of this episode, and there's still part of me almost rooting for him at points, like especially at the start when Rick's giving him this dressing down, and I just almost feel sorry for him for a minute there, almost, but then he's
very human,
goes off again. Yeah, he was I'm so glad they kept him around an extra season, because as comic book readers know, he should really have been gone by the end of season 1, but it was worth it for sure.
He's people love him as the Punisher. He guest starred on Daredevil and then had 2 seasons of his own series. And now MCU version of Daredevil is coming back, I think, early next year, sometime next year. And Bernthal's going to be in it again as the Punisher. So that'll be cool for Bernthal fans. Okay, ready?
Okay. My next point is Ernest Dickerson, who is the director of this episode. And this is good because it picks up on some of the points Lucy was making, and also some of the things you just observed, Jason. So Ernest Dickerson was Spike Lee's cinematographer, and he did the cinematography for Do the Right Thing and for Malcolm X and some others of Spike Lee's films. So he definitely has that eye of a cinematographer. And then he went on to have his own directing career, and he directed some not great horror movies like Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, which I have to
my favorite.
admit I've never seen. But then he also has done quite a bit of TV. He did several episodes of The Wire and of Dexter.
Oh.
And he did 11 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Including the one I was on. I think both the ones I was on.
Oh, did
yeah.
he?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Between his episodes were between season 1 and season 5. And so I think that there are just some beautifully composed shots in this episode that shows his background as a cinematographer. One which is when Shane comes onto the bus and we see the back of his head in the mirror as he's walking down the bus aisle and seeing things. And so we see him both coming and going at the same time, right? We see him from the back and the front. And that's actually technically a very difficult shot to achieve, because whenever you have a mirror like that, you have to put the camera somewhere where the mirror doesn't pick up the camera, and it has to be lit properly. So that's actually not a simple shot to accomplish. And then the shot that's already you mentioned where Shane's reflected in the broken window, and he looks like a walker, and then the walker hand comes up behind his reflection in the window pane. I thought that was just a great shot. And then the single walker in the meadow. Lucy, you were talking about the symbolism of that, and I see that as really good visual storytelling. Even if the symbolism is a little bit obvious, it's done visually. And also the same is true for the two dead walker cops. You know, in Fear the Walking Dead, Rick would have stood there and said to Randall, you know, now that I see these two cops together, it reminds me of Shane and me in my youth. And I'm now starting to think that maybe I shouldn't leave Shane. I should go back and get him, right?
Exactly.
But
Randall's like, no.
It's a shorthand.
no.
Yeah, so we get what Rick is feeling without having... Yeah. Randall's like, just kill me. Am I on Fear the Walking Dead?
But this episode manages to get all of that across visually, and I think that is great and so much better than putting it in any
and you get a feeling from it, which I like. When I'm moved,
exactly.
Especially the lone zombie, I felt something there, you know.
Yes, and that shot is so beautiful.
Oh, it's wonderful. Even the way he's moving is really there's something to it.
Yeah,
you know?
Ambling along.
And then when they put Randall back in the trunk at the end, we get a shot from Randall's point of view looking up at Rick and Shane, and they're standing very close together, and they're alive and they're together the way that the two walker cops were dead, right? And so that's a contrast.
And we're Randall in that moment.
I know.
Yeah. For the moment, they're working as partners again. And then one of the things that I thought was that I thought maybe you would mention in your talk about symbolism, Lucy, is Lori says to Maggie, "Sometimes you have to cross the line."
Yes.
And then the next shot, we see the swerve marks on the road where the car that they're driving with Randall in the trunk has crossed the center line and then crossed over back again. So they've literally crossed the line. Rick and Shane have crossed the line, and then they've crossed back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Shane crossed the line with Rick by throwing a wrench at his head.
And I was thinking about that line as well in reference to Laurie taking the pills and realizing that she didn't want to, she wanted to keep the baby. And I wondered, I don't know. Yeah.
I bet you that's what they were going for. Love this. God, you guys are so insightful. I love it.
Do you feel like you're in a lit seminar, Jason?
It's great.
Like, let's pull
it
out the
adds a
themes,
lot
man.
to it. I'm listening to a good podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
That was it.
Cool. Lucy?
I feel like we're going to get into the Andrea of it all. I don't have as strong feelings about this as I thought I might. I was more distracted by the Andrea and Laurie scene, which we've touched on, but what we see in this episode is Beth is suicidal. She wants to attempt to die by suicide. I think it's important that we use the phrase die by suicide rather than commit suicide, because that's a problematic term to use. So Beth wants to take her own life. Maggie is very opposed to this, understandably. Maggie's in a horrible position in this episode. I felt really sorry for her. I feel like Maggie's having to carry a lot in these 2 episodes with her dad gone and Beth being the way she is now. And what we see is Andrea sees herself in Beth's trajectory, and she wants to give Beth the choice that she feels was taken away from her. So Andrea lets Maggie go out, take a break, and actually opens the door to the bathroom for Beth. I had it in my head that she left the glass or left the knife with her, but she actually just opens the door and says, "Is this what you want?" And then we don't see what happens next, but we can assume that Andrea goes away and leaves Beth on her own. Beth does cut her wrist, but immediately regrets it, is very upset and apologises to Maggie, who has busted the door down with the help of Laurie. So there's a big thorny question here about Andrea's actions, her motivations for them, and the outcomes of it. I think Andrea raises a good point at the start about people being allowed to make their own decisions, but I don't think that Beth is in a position to make her own decisions here. I think she's a lot younger than Andrea was when she wanted to do the same thing. I think she undermines Maggie's attempts to comfort Beth. I think what she does is in many ways pretty unforgivable, and particularly the way she responds when Maggie's very angry at her, which is to smile smugly and go, "She wants to live," which I just think is the worst response you can give when someone's like, "What the fuck did you just do?" So yeah, it's a resounding thumbs down for Andrea, but I'm less angry about it than I thought I would be.
Do we know how old Beth is supposed to be?
Teenager,
high school age.
I always had her as like 15 or 16, but I can double check this in the background while y'all chat.
Yeah, I get a feeling she's just a kid. Well, should I go through my thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, go.
She's supposed to be 16. Sorry, just
16,
16 or 17. Yeah.
So when I think I might have mentioned this on a podcast before, but it's years ago, back in high school, I thought about suicide. It was after a breakup, my first real love, and I felt so depressed, and I felt like there was nothing to live for, and I just couldn't muster up any enthusiasm for anything, and I didn't want to feel that way, and it lasted for weeks. And I told my friend Dan, I just can't think of anything to live for. I don't think I really thought about it seriously, though. I was just like, fuck, I hope this is over. I hope this ends at some point or I'm in trouble. So when there did start to be, it started to fade, and I felt some relief and some joy. I was so grateful and relieved. So now, I've kids, this whole podcasting thing, so many great things in life. I'm so glad that it never did get to a point where I would decide to take my life. But I think, watching The Last of Us, not to spoil anything, but I'll just say that the subject comes up in a much different context, and it's much more of a debate there, I would say. But here, not only is Beth young, but she's just experienced a lot of trauma, and she's really in the middle of emotion about that. And I resist the idea of just being okay with people taking their own life. Also, if you're at the end of your life, if you're in a terminal illness you're suffering, you're older, then yeah, I say yes, absolutely at that point. So there's debate to be had about all this. But when you're young, you've just gone through a trauma and you're in the middle of the emotions about it, then I would say you need to try to at least let some time pass so you're clear-headed and you can make a decision from a place of having a clear head. She's nowhere near that.
No,
and
she's not.
For Andrea to not only just leave her alone, but to tell her sister, I'm going to watch over your sister that you're super worried about, and then leave her alone. That, like, I've really been trying to look at everybody with fresh eyes and not just go into the stereotypical, oh, this person's annoying, this person, like, and just notice when they do good things. And I think Lori did a bunch of good things this episode, some not so great, but anyway, Andrea too. But after this, I can be like, okay, yeah, after this, I can notice when Andrea does good things. I know things are going to come up where she did good things, but I'm not going to like her anymore because I can't forgive this. It's just so bad. And if you're going to look around in the group and decide you want to kill someone because they're dangerous to the group, Andrea is also a good contender at this point.
I mean, fair, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you know, it could end up there being nobody left if you followed that logic all the way.
That's a good point. I thought Emily Kinney was so good at just being really listless. It reminded me of that time when I was in high school, just that paleness in her face and that faraway look in her eyes, and just so sad and grief stricken. And it reminded me, I had forgotten, but I interviewed her on this podcast years ago. It was episode 163. If you want to go back and listen, I actually don't remember anything about it, but the show notes say, big thanks to Emily Kinney for joining me for an in-depth, long time coming interview. We talked about her music, her thoughts on art, acting, and using emotion in your art and life, what it's like to smash a jar of lollipops against a man's head, and her thoughts on some of Beth's biggest moments over her time on The Walking Dead. So maybe that's good. I don't know. I'll put a link in the show notes if people want to check it out. So that's what I thought. And the whole thing about like, oh, she chose life. And I mean, it's like, well, you got lucky there. What if she hadn't? Then what would you think?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you got lucky, but I just think maybe encourage her to wait a few days at least, at the very, very least, you know?
Yeah.
And then see.
It makes me glad that Andrea's maybe not put in a parental role too soon. I'm not saying, trying not to be too judgmental, because there are lots of different ways of parenting. However, the idea of empowering somebody to make their own decision, amazing. Not this decision, not this method, not at this age.
Yeah. And not tricking someone into
no.
letting you do it. Lying,
Awful.
You know, if I was Maggie, I mean, I'm glad Maggie said you don't ever come in this house again, but she should have been like, Rick, Andrea's a bad person.
Lori, go whisper in Rick's ear.
Okay, whose turn is it? Rennie.
No, it's you, Jason.
Oh, it's
Isn't
my
it?
turn. Oh, I'll just take that as my turn.
Oh, okay. Okay, so my third point is the reason that I chose 18 miles out when you asked me to come on the podcast, which is how much I love unanswerable questions as they are posed in fiction. And I think in this case, it's the dilemma of Randall and what to do about Randall. And I don't think that there is a clearly right answer. I think each of the three options that they talk about could be debated as having points in its favor and points against it. So
the first one is throuple, right?
Oh, that's the fourth option, and that's clearly the one to go with. Okay, solved. Thank you, Jason. We're good.
Jason's standing over Randall's body like, what? And we're like, oh.
So should they keep him as a prisoner, or should they kill him, or should they let him go? Are the three options that I think that they debate, and I think that's the three options that exist. If they keep him as a prisoner, one of the ironies of the fall of civilization, and I'm putting civilization, I'm literally doing my fingers here, putting civilization in air quotes, is that after the fall of civilization, there are no more prisons. And it's very ironic that next season they're going to find a prison that will become a haven, right? Kind of an inside out prison, because the idea is that you're free and safe inside the prison because it keeps out the walkers.
And if they were in the prison when this went down, then it would keeping him prisoner would be a much more viable option. Who knows if they would choose it, but it's not practical right now necessarily,
right.
you know?
Yeah, they could lock him in a cell and be reasonably sure that he wouldn't be able to get out, right? Yeah, basically, in the current circumstances, there is really no way to restrain him that would be really safe, so that you wouldn't have to worry that he would get loose and come kill you in your sleep.
Yeah. Throw him in the well, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Keep him in the well. Yeah. Chain him to the laundry tub. Make him do all the laundry.
Right.
So, do you kill him? Well, Dale poses the question about that's important, which is, what does that make us if we kill him? Right. Mm-hmm. It is a decision to be living by a different set of rules than the ones that they've all lived with all their lives. Do you exile him? Now, interestingly, in ancient Athens, exile was a worse penalty than death, because the Athenians thought that being anywhere else than Athens was worse than death. So, but they can't exile him because he knows where the farm is. So that would, and we know that he has connections to a gang that outnumbers our people. So that is too dangerous. So what then should they do? And the more important question, I think, is how should the decision be made? Who gets to make the decision? Is it the Rictatorship? Is it consensus of the whole group? Is it something in between? And why does Rick get to be in charge anyway? Yeah. And why does Shane have to follow Rick's lead?
Mm-hmm. They never had a vote,
Why does Rick
really,
get to make this decision?
Yeah.
You know, who says? We just fall into this assumption of that's how it's going to be organized. And by we, I mean the group. I don't mean us.
We kind of do too, maybe, a lot of us anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's something that's really worth questioning. And for those of you who are all prepping for the apocalypse, as I, of course, always am, the most useful thing to think about is, who are your neighbors? How well do you know your neighbors? How well do you get along with your neighbors? Because where I live, there's the possibility of a very big earthquake happening, which could cut us off and isolate us from help from anywhere for a long time. So the few people who live right on my street are going to be the people I have contact with after that apocalypse. And, am I going to be Rick? Yes.
I would be in that colony like a shot.
And I would be very happy to have you.
Amazing.
So I don't have an answer to what the right thing to do is, and I love any piece of fiction